you find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, one half a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us.
Welcome into the Gibson Fantasy Football Podcast on this fine Thursday evening. Hey, Aaron, how are you?
Doing good. Each one of these podcasts we do gets me a little bit more excited for the season to start. That's for sure.
Itching closer, man. We're about to hit June next week.
I really hope all this is going to help me be a better fantasy owner and player. So, right, Toby? All right.
One can only hope. I mean, we did meet in the finals of our home league this year, so that's something.
Yeah, we met before, didn't we? That's the second time we've met, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we met in the playoffs in the semis one other time.
Yeah, I have not fared well against you, so I'm trying to learn your secrets. I will find them out.
You'll know all the players I like and don't like based on, these episodes we're doing these days.
That's true.
All right, well, if you're interested in finding out, so I'm Josh, and we got Aaron here from the GFF team. Website's GibsonFantasyFootball.com, Twitter Gibson_FF, Instagram, YouTube, and Podbean are all Gibson Fantasy Football. All right, as you talked about, we got risers, we got fallers. We're going for a 4-pack at each. Buckle up, my man. Are you ready to jump in?
I am. I'm just pulling up the list right now, and let's do it.
All right, first name, recently traded, newly acquired A.J. Brown, who is now a Philadelphia Eagle. It's a little weird seeing that written down for the first time. So I have him as a big faller. And you had some curiosities about this. So do you want to start us off here, or do you want me to tell you what I'm thinking?
Well, let me hear what you're thinking, and then I'll throw my 2 cents in.
All right, let's do it. So A.J. Brown was the guy on Tennessee. He was coming up for a contract. He's played just about 4 years in the league now. And he was the main guy, and he was catching balls from Tannehill. He's quite an above-average quarterback. Borderline elite, but not quite.
Yeah. And
didn't really have any competition. That was the big thing. Jonnu Smith left. I mean, they did grab Robert Woods, who's injured and may not start the season, but things were looking good. Julio was banged up all of last year. So I just think going to the Eagles, where you got Dallas Goedert, an established tight end, Devonta Smith, second-year sophomore wide receiver, he's going to have to compete for targets in an offense that, much like the Titans, doesn't like to throw the ball a lot. So that's where I'm at, but I'm curious to see what you got on the brain for us.
Well, I did some digging today on some research, and I saw that, the coach of Philadelphia is an ex-wide receiver himself. I like to think that these coaches are a little bit, smart and understand that position, especially when they're coming from that position. And I think the wide receiver core, I think Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown could be a lethal duo this year. So I think I get where you're coming from, though. It's one of those ones where Toby agrees too, by the way. But it's one of those ones where it's tricky because with Goddard and Smith, it could lessen the workload for him. So I get that point. I get why he's on a faller, but to me, I'm a believer. I think this could be a very deadly team, very deadly duo. So that's just my 2 cents, but.
That's fair, and I mean we'll segue and lump into the other half of that Devonta Smith here. But I think, as you're saying, if Jalen Hurts takes that next step and elevates himself, and this becomes a high-powered offense, even if they primarily run the ball, there's still lots of opportunity. If Jalen Smith could get up to, I think I'd have to double check the stat, but he barely threw 20 touchdowns last year. Like, he didn't throw a lot. He rushed for, I think, 10, but. So I mean, if he could get to 30 touchdowns, And that's enough that between Goddard and Smith and A.J. Brown, they could all succeed and do well, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
And the yardage would have to go up from this year as well. But we'll see. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts just needs to show up before the fourth quarter. Those guys' numbers will go up. So
stressful for fantasy, man.
But does he ever show up?
Oh, yeah. Rushing touchdown, passing touchdown, rushing yards. He'll get you there. You don't want to watch the first 3 quarters.
No.
So Devonta Smith, I mean, we pretty much covered it already. All the same reasons.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown comes to town. Devonta Smith goes from potentially the number 1 to definitely the number 2. And maybe even 3 if you like Goddard better. But yeah, same arguments, same thought process.
Yeah.
Anything to add for Smith here?
No, I think he was on my team at the end of the year. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
He was on my team at one point, and I enjoyed having him on there.
I knew he was because the one week we played each other, and I had Hurts, and you purposely put in Smith.
So that's right.
Have the other half of my stack.
Did, yes.
All right. Next up, another second-year player. Did not. I'll throw his team in here while we're at it, but Elijah Moore, wide receiver for the New York Jets. So he had a huge year as a rookie there and did incredibly well. Mm-hmm. Faced some injuries towards the middle of the season, but by the end of the season was absolutely balling out. So I really liked him, and I was pretty bullish on him still remaining a talented player and a good player for fantasy. But they grabbed Garrett Wilson, and, that's probably one of 2 or 3 wide receivers that if they drafted one of those guys, I was going to be worried. And so I'm worried. I think he's going to drop to the 2. You do have also in that Jets offense, I mean, we're relying on Zach Wilson, right? So you get a little nervous now of who can he support. I mean, they are the 2 main options. They don't really have a solidified tight end there. They got Conklin and Uzama, so nobody's writing home about either of those guys. But yeah, thoughts on Elijah Moore?
No, I agree. The New York Jets is just a huge question mark. Eventually they're going to have to turn the ship around. I mean, you can only be such a bad team for so long. Am I right? But I mean, they just stink the bed all the time, and you could put all the wide receivers on this faller list, and I would have to agree with it. It's just, I fingers crossed. Like I think I've said it before on this podcast, where I've said I hope that the New York Jets can turn it around, because like I said, out of those 2 teams, I like the Jets better than the Giants. So
definitely,
I hope. You know what? I do hope that we're wrong on this. I hope Elijah Moore has a huge season, but I'm kind of with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he could still be a good player. He's just a faller. And I mean, that's maybe some context to add there, right?
Yeah.
When we're talking about risers or fallers, it doesn't mean that somebody's gone from being like maybe a top 15 wide receiver to like a top 50 all of a sudden. They might have slipped now to more of like a wide receiver 3, in that top 30 range. So context might be important when we're talking about these things as well.
Yeah. Agreed.
So for me, he was a definite wide receiver 2 with probably top 15 upside. And now he's gone down to more of a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside if the Jets take that next step.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And same with, to backtrack for a second, Devonta Smith was in the same conversation. Would have also viewed him as a top 15 option. But now more of that top 30, wide receiver 3. And then A.J. Brown was like a top 10, almost top 5 wide receiver who probably is right around the border as a wide receiver 1. I mean, maybe I would say top 15 for sure. I'd have to run through some names to double check and see exactly where I have him, but he's in that 12 to 15 area there.
Yeah, I took a look at one list, and he was just outside the top 10, I believe, on one of the lists that I saw. So
I could see that.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Next up, the theme of rookie wide receivers seeing big names drafted is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sun God himself.
Mhm.
So he for the Detroit Lions, they drafted Jamison Williams. Now, this is more of a long-term faller than short-term because
Right.
Jamison Williams is coming off a serious ACL injury from the Super Bowl or the Senior
Yes.
Bowl. So he's unlikely to be starting the season, and could miss like a good chunk of the season. So Amon-Ra St. Brown could certainly come out and play quite well for the beginning of the year. But at some point, Jamison Williams is going to take over as the number one guy. They said that if not for the injury, he would have been the number one receiver in this class and potentially a top 10 NFL draft pick. So he still ended up going pretty close to that because the Lions traded up to grab him at, I think it was 12 from 32.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely impacts Amon-Ra St. Brown more towards the whole of the season than the beginning.
Yeah. I don't. It's hard to tell about rookies and when they're coming in, what they're going to do, and everything. But I don't know too much about the Detroit Lions, so I can't speak too much on that team. But yeah, I'll agree with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's just too many mouths to feed, too, right? You've got Swift out of the backfield, who's an excellent pass catcher. You got TJ Hawkinson at tight end, who's catching a lot of passes. Amon-Ra St. Brown took advantage when they were both injured last year and was amazing. And to his credit, deserves it. But now you got the three of them plus Jamison Williams, plus they grabbed Josh Reynolds and DJ Chark, who, I mean, I'm not huge on either of them, but they're going to catch some passes. So there's a lot of people there.
It's another one of those teams with a lot of question marks, right? Detroit and New York Jets. I mean, there's only so much time they can spend at the bottom of the league. And, hopefully are some of these draft picks going to turn into something bigger than.
Yeah. And I like where they're headed. I like Dan Campbell as a coach. I think he's good for the team. They seem to have good morale. They played harder. They produced really good fantasy assets when they were on the field, and Swift and Hawkinson. Even Jared Goff looked okay.
Yeah. What's the over under on the coach crying this season? How many times?
Oh. Depends how many tough losses they have in a row to start the year.
Poor guy. Man, he must be stressed out, like just emotionally drained at the end of games.
Well, then he came out and talked about biting kneecaps and hammering back 2 to 3 espressos in the morning. Like,
it's not helping.
Guy's an animal.
Oh, it's as bad as right now.
Fits the theme here of guys that was, top 24 with a potential to be top 15, and now is more of a wide receiver 3. I mean, these guys are interesting, right? Between Smith and Moore and Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're gonna have to kind of call your shot at some point and push them up a little bit. But in general, they're more of wide receiver 3s with some upside than they were wide receiver 2s with top 15 potential.
Yeah, out of those guys, I see Brown, Smith definitely going, in one of the first, one of the rounds in your fantasy draft. The other guys I could see maybe not getting picked up. Some of those guys that early on in your fantasy, if you have an injury or players not playing well or something, those could be one of those guys that you get, and maybe they see there and give you some good weeks. And
yeah, they'll be later round picks for sure.
Yeah,
that won't be quite up there with some of the other receivers. So it'll be curious to see where they end up come draft season. All right, let's flip the script here. First riser, we sort of alluded to this, but A.J. Brown was leaving town and left a lot of vacated targets. And so, I mean, they brought in Robert Woods from the Rams on a trade. But as I said, he's injured, probably not going to be ready for week 1.
Yeah.
So the rookie, Treylon Burks, not only gets drafted to be paired with Tannehill, who, relative to other quarterbacks in the league, is a great pairing, but also takes over that number 1 role, or has a chance to at least almost immediately.
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up for this one. Me and Ryan Tannehill, I'm not a big fan, so I don't think he's going to shatter anything. I think he's going to have a tough season with those losses, because you look at the rest of the wide receivers. I mean, toss up a coin. I mean, Des Fitzpatrick, could he be something? I mean, Cody Hollister, like those are some of the other names that they really. Yeah, I wasn't. I don't know. Rookies, it's tough to call, but
True.
not the biggest fan of this one. I'm staying away. Like personally, I'm staying away from Tennessee. It could burn me big time. Like Ryan Tannehill's burned a lot of people in his career that have doubted him. So, and I'm one of them. So, yeah,
No, I like it, man. I like the disagreement here, and I like what you bring in around that Titans offense could really struggle, and the passing game could struggle. I think that's a good counterpoint around, rookie wide receivers also historically don't have great initial starts to the season. Their first 8 games, they usually develop in the second half. So, I mean, Burks is, one of those elite wide receivers that was drafted that we were kind of expecting to be special. But we have been spoiled with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson absolutely lighting the world on fire. And I mean, so Justin Jefferson breaks rookie records. Then Chase comes in and breaks one of his records, like back-to-back years of rookies breaking records. That's not going to happen this year.
No, I don't see it happening.
So I mean, these guys will be good, but even still, Burks will be probably ahead of, Smith and Moore and Amon-Ra just because of target share. He's not going to be that much ahead of them, right? No. And he's not going to be near anybody like AJ Brown. So.
But you know what? If you're going for a rookie in your draft, not a bad pick. Yeah.
I think him and Drake London for the Falcons, even Garrett Wilson for the Jets, maybe. But
yeah.
All right, Mr. Hollywood. So Marquise Hollywood Brown, another one changing teams here. The Arizona Cardinals. So he got traded from the Ravens. The Ravens are a low passing volume offense. Aside from last year, things went kind of haywire because they lost all their running backs, but typically don't throw the ball a lot. And he was competing there with the rookie Rashad Bateman and tight end Mark Andrews. And now he goes to Arizona. Gets paired up with Kyler Murray, who's probably a top 5 quarterback in the league, top 10 for sure. And not only that, but Hopkins is suspended for the first 6 games. So gets an additional 6 games where he's the guy along with sort of failed rookie from last year, Rondell Moore, and old man AJ Green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Marquise Brown. I had him on my team. Another one that I had on my team for a little bit. Really a guy that I felt like, can produce big time for you. He had some big weeks. Some other weeks he didn't. The Baltimore team, that was the Baltimore team, though, wasn't it? Like last season, ups and downs. So I think being hooked up with Kyle Murray in that offense, it's only going to be helpful for him. And I only see his numbers going up for you. So definitely a guy that I would definitely take back on my team if I get a chance. So I like this one for sure.
Agreed. Yeah. I think he's got lots of upside with Kyler Murray, and he slots into that wide receiver 2 range with wide receiver 1 upside without Hopkins for sure.
Yeah.
The aforementioned Rashad Bateman on the Baltimore Ravens. So he sees Marquise Hollywood leave, and he may not get all of his targets, but he certainly has a chance now to establish himself. Bateman looked good in a few games last year, struggled with injury, was a rookie. So, you throw all that into the equation and you kind of have to see what does this season bring. I put Bateman on here a little bit begrudgingly because I don't have a lot of faith that there's going to be a lot of volume to go around in Baltimore. So I might lean, someone like Elijah Moore or Devonta Smith, even though Rashad Bateman has a better path to target volume, just because I don't necessarily trust that Baltimore passing offense.
Yeah, I agree, because I took a look at some of the other wide receivers, that they have, and not a deep team, definitely. So I mean, you got that right by Bateman. And I agree too. Like I would take, Brown or Devontae Smith or even Elijah Moore before him. But like I said, like with the ups and downs with Baltimore last season, if that's the case this year, Bateman could be that Hollywood Brown, so he could still have a bunch of games. So I also like, I think it's James Prochel. I think it's James Prochel, 2020 round 6 draft pick. I think he could be somebody that has a breakout year. Hopefully, maybe, fingers crossed.
Yeah, you never know. It's a bit of a long shot, but I mean, somebody other than Lamar Jackson and Rashad Bateman has to catch passes.
That's what I was thinking, and I saw his numbers. They seem to be progressing each and every year that he's been in the NFL. So, but I think Bateman will be the number one wide receiver there anyway. So, I like them being a riser.
With you.
In the mid pack there.
All right. Last but not least, this is a bit of a homer pick as a personal favorite here. Gabriel Davis for the Buffalo Bills. So there was some thought that they might grab a wide receiver. And while they technically did, they grabbed Khalil Shakir in the 5th round. It's not somebody that's going to threaten his job as the number 2. Had they grabbed a day 1 for sure, even a day 2 wide receiver, you'd have some question marks about could this person come in and compete with Davis to be the number 2 behind Stephon Diggs. But in the 5th round with Diggs and Davis there, and then Crowder after that, I don't have any concerns now that Davis is not the number 2 in Buffalo.
Yeah, he for sure is the number 2, and a guy too. I'm cheering for him. I mean, I love guys that come up big in playoff games, and that's what he did. And I just hope that's going to be able to carry over into the regular season for him, and definitely, filling that number 2 spot for Buffalo. I mean, one of the best quarterbacks in the game too that he's got throwing to him, who likes to throw the ball a lot. So look out for this. This could be a surprise offense. It could be deeper than what we're thinking. It could be, with Crowder and even McKenzie there as well too. It could be a deep wide receiver. So, but definitely number 2. He's filling that number 2 spot for sure. So, and
we see with elite quarterback play, guys where there are 2 wide receivers that do super well. Last year you think of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You think of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. You think of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of duos where 2 can produce really high stats, even though the second guy's not the one on the team, right? So there's a good chance that Diggs has a great season, but that doesn't mean that Davis couldn't also be a top 15 wide receiver.
Well, especially in fantasy, there could be guys that get a lot more touchdowns than they do yards, right? I mean, some of those guys that are just so good in the red zone in tight quarters, just that will get you big numbers, and that could be the case in Buffalo for sure. But also too, they could also be deep threats. I mean, that's the bonus. So that's what you hope for as a fantasy owner, that you get those guys that are not just, a touchdown here and there, but the guys that can go long and make those big plays. And I think he could be one of them. So,
yeah. And I mean, Diggs is still elite, but he is aging. So, I mean, there is always a chance too that Davis could start to overtake some of those targets. All right. We got 4 risers. We got 4 fallers. Anything else you want to add about these players, or is there anyone we didn't cover that didn't talk about that you like to throw out there as a honorable mention?
No, I think these are all great names that would be a benefit for most fantasy teams. I'm hoping that I got a few that I think that you would like, so that I can pick before you and pick them up.
Some targets come draft season.
Yeah, but no, I agree. I very good list, and I wanted to come back with some counter arguments, but you just are so good at making the arguments.
You made some good ones, man, especially on Treylon Burks there.
Yeah, step up my game though. I got to step it up.
That's all right. All right. So as we said at the beginning, GibsonFantasyFootball.com, Gibson_FF on Twitter, Gibson Fantasy Football, all one word, on Instagram, YouTube, and Podbean. Please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave us any comments if there's anything you want to let us know about. And come find us on Twitter if you want to interact. Otherwise, enjoy a fine Thursday evening and the rest of your weekend.
I've got one more thing to add. Did you write something recently?
I did. There's a DeAndre Hopkins article that I just wrote about. You can find it on Rotoballer. We'll throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely throw that out there.
All right, my man. Thank you for that. As always, clear eyes, full heart,